This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to another edition of the Financial Beat. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler, the star of our show. Logan is the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regery Financial, serving you with offices in Hemet and Redlands, and folks from all over Southern California depend on Logan and the folks at Regery to get them to and through retirement. And Logan, it's great to be back on the radio with you.
Yeah, ready to give you guys another great week of some retirement education and financial education, and ready to dive in.
Got a lot of interesting things to talk about today, but first let me put your phone number out there for anyone who'd like to have a discovery meeting. That is a getting to know you conversation with Logan Sadler. It's 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Call that number, leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back, and then you can make it happen. That's a good first step to take. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, Logan, in the news recently, the hiatus on student loan repayments has been extended by the president one more time. How long can this go on? And do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, it feels like we've been, like you said, it feels like we've been waiting on this for years now, right? It is one of those things where I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think it's a really good opportunity for some of you out there that do have the student loans, or some of you guys listen to the show where your kids have significant student loans. It's definitely a good idea to take advantage of this time where interest isn't being built up on that and really start hammering away on those. I've talked with several people over the last few weeks, few months, few years, as long as this has been going on. And, they've been like, well, you know what? I have the money, but I'm just going to hold on to it and see what happens. Mm-hmm. My thing is, I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like, hey, this is a good time to kind of kick back a no interest loan at this point and really start hammering it down. And because most of you out there, I don't think they're going to forgive those loans. I don't know about you, Ron, but yeah. I think most of these people that, get those high student loans and go become a teacher or doctor or nurse, your income is now so high that I don't think you're going to fall into any type of program that they're going to come out with where they're going to forgive them. So I would say go ahead and start hammering those out. If not, I've seen those dang student loans drag on, for 10 or 15 years in some cases. So I would just do the best you could and get them out of the way.
Well, just to consider something here, let's say that they did forgive those loans. How upset do you think the people who had been paying on their student loans for years would be? I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, they'd be a little upset, right? I mean, that's kind of like basically paying off a car, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, we were going to give you the car, but since you paid it off,
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be upset. But I mean, I could speak from my own standpoint. When my wife went back to school, we went ahead and paid off those as fast as we could and got those out of the way. Could they have forgiven them down the road? Maybe, but I'd rather just not have that hanging over my head and just get financially free and be able to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that is definitely the best way to handle it. So at any rate, let's talk about some other things that folks don't consider as they consider, putting that back farther and farther. There are things you don't consider. A lot of folks don't consider when they're talking about retirement, a lot of details that they don't really think about. And one of those things is, and I know you have a lot of families who fit into this category, baby boomers, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to need to support your parents or kids, or maybe both, later on?
Yeah, that's something we definitely see a lot. I think the baby boomer generation, they're calling it the sandwich generation because so many of them find themselves supporting aging parents as well as their children in some cases who are either still going to school or really haven't taken that next step to move out of the house and become, financially free. So what happens is that client that's, between 60 and 65 years old, and I have a few of these I could think of off the top of my head where, yeah, they're at that point where they're 60, 65 years old and they're saying, you know what, Logan, I'd really like to retire. And so we start kind of going over the plan, and they just, with the way that they're having to support their aging parents and their kids at the standpoint right now, it's one of those things where we might not be able to do that. The kids might be 24, 25, and the parents might be 85 years old. So you kind of have, like we said, the sandwich generation where they're trying to support both of them. So it really just takes a lot of extra income and resources to facilitate that. So it's a really tough spot. And I've seen it again with, a lot of different clients I could think of off the top of my head where they kind of do find themselves in this predicament. And there's different ways to deal with it, but it definitely is a hard situation to be in.
Gosh, a lot of folks in that situation, and it's unfortunate, but it's something that a lot of people you don't even think about are going through that right now. And I'm guessing that a lot of people listening to this show find themselves in that situation too. And so therefore, it's a good idea to have a conversation with Logan Sadler about your situation and see exactly where you are and how you can get where you want to go. Again, that number to call is 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN, Regary Financial. How does your family feel about you quitting your job? And I'll bet that in most of these cases, it's like a wife who maybe has a husband retire, or maybe it's the other way around, and he or she says, "Gosh, I don't want you around the house all the time. I'm tired of seeing you. Get out and do something with your time."
No kidding. Yeah, you would be surprised how often I actually hear that. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard that around, at family gatherings or from a friend or a neighbor about people retiring. There is a lot of different things to consider. I always say there's obviously the financial aspect, which I'm really good at dealing with and what we cover, but there's also the emotional aspect where sometimes that person who's retiring, husband or wife, they might not be ready to sit around the house. And same vice versa, like you mentioned, Ron, that wife or husband that was already retired might have actually kind of enjoyed that alone time a little bit, right? So you really got to consider what your family is going through and what you're going through, and making sure that when you do retire, you kind of have some ideas of what you're going to do in retirement, and as well as, what will the impact be on your kids, your wife, and you, and how will that kind of incorporate into how you envision that retirement? I think that's something where a lot of people don't really spend enough time when they're getting ready to retire, is kind of getting that next chapter ready. How are we going to transition emotionally into retirement? How will it affect your family, you, and your day-to-day in your new journey?
We have talked about this before, but there are lots of folks out there who retire and then they don't know what in the world they're going to do with their time. Maybe it's a good idea to think about retiring from your job, but also retiring to something. Have a good idea of how you're going to spend your time after you don't have to go to work every day.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, Ron, retiring to something. It is very true where a lot of these clients, they may have a job where, you've kind of done it for years, but you wouldn't say you necessarily love it, or might not like the new people you're working with because maybe a lot of your friends and the other coworkers you've been with have already retired. So you're dealing with that whole new generation, and it might be something that it just isn't as pleasurable for you anymore, or you don't enjoy the work, or you just kind of envision something different. And I see a lot of people sometimes just say, well, it's time to retire, and kind of jump into retirement. And sometimes it's not all it's cracked up to be if you're one of those people that's very busy, that you enjoy doing very active. Sometimes it's hard to do that in retirement. So like you said, you might retire to something, whether that's a passion-driven job, whether it's working at the golf course or doing something you love to do, or sometimes even volunteering is a great option. If we already have the financial aspect set up, it might be a really great idea to take a dive into some of those volunteering jobs you've always wanted to do. So you really got to consider that as far as, like you were saying, Ron, retiring to something. I think that's a very big point to point out there about how to retire. Doesn't necessarily mean pull the plug and sit on the couch. It might be retiring to something, whether it's staying active or whether it's some type of next job, next phase, and something that you're more passionate and really look forward to getting up to do every day.
Logan, I know you talk to your clients about the importance of maintaining some kind of an emergency fund, and I guess if you're retiring, you need to be prepared to handle those major purchases that are going to come out of the blue. You don't see them coming. Maybe your roof starts leaking. You got to replace your roof, or you have to. Your transmission goes out on your car. You got to get another car. There are always things that happen like that. And as the old character on Saturday Night Live used to say, Rosanna Dana, it's always something.
Yeah, no, you're right. I always used to tell a joke at our in-person seminars when we'd be talking at these events. I'd always tell people, you might be absolutely shocked to hear this. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Your roof still leaks in retirement, right? You still need tires on your car. I mean, all this stuff, like you said, it still comes up. Just because we're retired, life doesn't say, well, let me just take it easy on Mr. and Mrs., right? Things still come up. So, like you said, being prepared for those can be a huge thing. I mean, big expenses do occur throughout the years. Unfortunately, when it's not a regular expense, we sometimes forget about it. When you're sitting down and doing your budget every month, you and your wife, or you might look at it and say, all right, we got our rent covered, we got our mortgage covered, health insurance is covered, some gas bills, things like that, all the stuff we think of that normally gets charged every month. We're real easy and we actually stay on top of that. It's the stuff like, oh yeah, my tires on my truck are out, so it's $1,000 to get new tires. That's a big expense. Then like you said, your roof, in today's world, your roof's leaking. It might cost you 20 or 30 grand to redo your roof. So you really got to make sure in your retirement plan, you've kind of built out a little niche for these large expenses. I always say, you want some guaranteed income. That's to cover things like Social Security, pensions, annuity payments. Those are what's called guaranteed. Those are what you live off of. That's your check coming in each month. But you also need to have some extra money in some type of an investment or some type of an account that's going to be there where you have some extra money to pull from if these big expenses come up. That way it doesn't affect your month-to-month budget. So that's just one of the ways we like to kind of construct the plans because, these major purchases can be an absolute killer if you're not really prepared for how to handle them.
One of the unpleasant parts of your job, I'm sure, is dealing with folks in a very emotional state. And you, of course, are fully prepared to help them prepare for eventualities. And one of those eventualities is what happens to the income plan that you've put together at the death of the first spouse. Things are really going to change a lot.
Yeah, this is something, that's a great point, Ron. I mean, we see a lot of clients where they've kind of never really met with an advisor, or maybe they had an advisor before that really didn't take a lot of that in-depth stuff into account. And they come over to meet with us on our review meeting or discovery meeting or however they come over to us. And basically, we'll kind of walk through this because one of the things that's really often forgot about is things like pensions, Social Security, different types of accounts that might stop or be reduced if something happens to one spouse. So let's walk through a little example here. Let's talk about Joe and Sue, okay? All right. Joe and Sue. So Joe and Sue, let's say Joe's Social Security is $2,500 a month, and Sue's is let's say $1,500 per month.
Okay.
Let's say Joe has a pension of $3,000 per month. Okay, that's a pretty good income. That's around $7,000 per month. Joe and Sue are doing just fine. Unfortunately, Joe passes away. What a lot of people don't know is in this situation, Sue would now get Joe's Social Security of $2,500 a month, but she would lose hers of $1,500 per month, right? So right there, we lost $1,500 per month. The other thing to note is their pension only paid a 75% survivor benefit. So it went from $3,000 per month to $2,250. Right. So now you look, Sue, is obviously going through this emotional state of, yes, her husband passed away of maybe 30 or 40 years in this example. And now she went from $7,000 a month to $4,700. So, her income dropped $2,500 per month or $27,000 per year. So, this is just one example where I've seen a lot of people not account for this. A lot of people nowadays still have mortgages and other stuff in retirement that they're still paying. So there's a lot more to look at here than just, we have pensions and Social Securities and maybe some 401ks will be fine. But how are we going to structure that to make sure we're able to replace income? Because, even though Joe passed away in this example, I'm sure Sue still wants to live a pretty good life, right? She still wants to maybe travel, see her grandkids, and be able to maybe live in the same house they were living in. So this is a lot of what we kind of deal with on the back end when we're building out retirement plans for clients, is to make sure we're covering that, because replacing income for a spouse is typically one of the most common ways that we see people take a drastic change in retirement if it's not done correctly. So, like you said, Ron, I think all of these are really great points about how to get a mindset ready for retirement, as well as maybe how to get some of the back end done with the planning. And that's exactly what we do. At Rigeri Financial, we have been around for a long time and specialize in retirement planning. So if you're one of those clients or one of those people listening to this show that really has kind of taken these 5 points here and wants some more explanation on how that might pertain to your situation, give us a call. Come in for that discovery meeting. I'd be happy to sit down, spend an hour with you, and really dive into depth about your plan, how to accomplish it, and making sure we've covered these these emergency expenses that might come up in retirement, as well as to make sure we've covered what happens if something happens to you or your spouse. How will that impact your retirement?
Just as long as you'll take care of the uh-ohs, I'll be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's your Financial Beat Beat number to get in touch with Logan Sadler and the folks at Rick Gary Financial. 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Call that number today. Leave your name and your phone number, and you'll get a call back. Remember also that Logan Sadler works with 3 different generations of some of the client families, and many of those clients have been with his firm for more than 25 years. Rick Gary Financial has been around for a long time, serving the folks of Southern California. If you're interested in getting to and through retirement, not having to lie awake at night worried about outliving your money, that's the call you need to make right now. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler, Rick Gary Financial, and we'll be right back with more in just a moment.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of a plan that has some serious issues. Much better. That's the sound of a plan that was created by someone listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. So which sound is your financial plan making?
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Logan's on the radio. Go tell everybody you know. If they're not listening to the show right now, they need to, particularly if they are approaching retirement age or even thinking about retiring one of these days. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember that number is 888-823-PLAN. Incorporate the word plan because that needs to be incorporated into your life. It's the most important aspect here. Logan Sadler is on the radio, of course. He also has a podcast, and he's on YouTube and has great partnerships at Rick Gary with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists to help offer you well-rounded guidance in all things financial for their clients. You can get a discovery meeting at no cost. And again, that number to call to make it happen is 888-823-PLAN. Logan would love to hear from you. You know, around your house, you probably have in your kitchen or somewhere, you have a junk drawer with maybe, some duct tape or rubber bands or highlighters, maybe a pair of scissors, whatever the case may be. But most people have those. But most people also have a financial junk drawer as well. So I thought maybe we could talk about what's in there and how those things can be put to better use with a conversation with Logan Sadler. So,
yeah, perfect.
How about if you have stuck away in a drawer or maybe a file, a really old life insurance policy that, you haven't really even thought about for a while? What should you do with that, Logan?
Yeah, that's a great point. I always love to bring that up. I have a lot of clients, Ron, I'll ask them, maybe they're 65 years old and they're coming on board with Rick Gary Financial. I'll ask them, hey, do you guys have any life insurance? They say, you know what, I do. I'm 65 and I think I got it in my early 20s. And I'm like, okay. Wow. Is it a whole life insurance, a universal life insurance, a term? I'm not sure. It's life insurance, right? So it's like, okay, well, now, first thing we got to do is take a review of that because I've seen it so often where sometimes clients think they have life insurance, and sometimes it's expired or maybe even switched companies sometimes, and they're not really even sure where it's at. So I always tell people that's one thing that an advisor should be doing with you. You should be reviewing those insurance policies, not to say we need to buy a new one or move it, but really make sure it's still the best fit for you and making sure you understand how it works. I think a lot of people aren't sure that there is a difference between variable universal life, index universal life, whole life insurance, and term life insurance. They could all be different and have different facets to them that could really be useful in some cases, and in some other cases not so useful. So we might be able to do something better with it. So you really want to make sure you look at that. Life insurance policies need to be reviewed because, again, I don't want it to be a situation where somebody passes away and we think we have life insurance and we think we had the proper coverage, but we really didn't. So you really want to make sure you're spending the time. And if you're coming in to meet with us, that's one of the things we ask for when you're coming in. Bring any life insurance policies you have because we want to make sure that you have the proper coverage, as well as educate you a little bit on maybe what you have and fill in the blanks on the questions that you probably didn't know.
By the same token, you may have in your so-called financial junk drawer, you may have a will that you had an attorney prepare for you many years ago, and it may be totally outdated. or, estate plan that you put together, and your life has changed, and that's something that needs to be reviewed as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's probably one of the most common types of junk drawer items I see. It's funny because you'll go pay X amount of money and go get a trust and a will done, and then all of a sudden, I ask clients, hey, do you guys have a trust or a will? And they say, yeah, I got it done in 1999. And I'm like, well, okay, let's talk for a minute. Have you ever moved since 1999? They're like, well, yeah, I've moved twice. It's like, well, okay, did you update the trust? Probably not. So there's a lot of those different stipulations. You need to make sure you're having your trust reviewed probably more frequently than you would think. Yeah. I always like to say I would pull it off and dust it off at least every 5 years. Every 5 years, you and your wife have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or whatever you drink and just kind of read through it and make sure that things are still in order, because you would be surprised how often those get out of date, because sometimes we have grandkids or we have more kids or we buy or sell a home or, things change. So you really want to make sure you're reviewing that. And it's one of those documents, I'll be honest with you, as you get older and older, that trust and will is so, so important when it comes to financial planning, and making sure you have the right items listed and making sure you have everything in order is so, so important.
Yeah. And, some people that you left as beneficiaries, may have died, or, you may have had little kids when you had it done and now they're adults. Things change. For sure.
Well, you'd be surprised, Ron, how often I see it sometimes where people have been divorced and their beneficiaries are the ex-wife or ex-husband.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen, right? So,
except for the former wife or husband.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good day for them.
It might cause a little problem with your current wife or husband. So.
And the kids.
Yeah. You may have 401k statements from your last, let's say, 2, 3, maybe even 4 employers. People change jobs so often these days. And, some people walk away from one job, go into another, get busy, and just completely forget about that 401k they had with their previous employer. And that's something that needs to be reviewed as well.
Yeah, that's probably one of the, I would say, other than the trust and the old life insurance, this is probably the most common. I'll have clients come in and they say, yeah, I have about $500,000-$600,000. I'm 60 years old. In my current 401k, I have $400,000 or $500,000. And I'll ask the question, do you have any old 401ks or any other IRAs that we need to be aware of? And they'll go, well, you know what? Now that you mention it, I think I do have maybe even 2 or 3 of them at some of these older jobs, and then all of a sudden you start gathering, there's 50,000 there, 40,000 there, 100,000 there. And I can almost guarantee you, if you were in an account, 20 or 30 years ago, it's probably not in the best funds or not in the best investment lineup for you at this point of your life, right? Because you look at how much things change. I mean, you might have a bunch of it in bonds or expensive mutual funds or different high fee investments. You might not know. So it is so important when you're doing, when you're gathering that junk drawer, you really want to make sure. And your current advisor, if you don't have one, give us a call. But your advisor should be doing all this for you, where you're taking a look and keeping all of this consolidated. I always tell people, when you're transitioning to retirement, the best thing you could do is consolidate accounts. Obviously, make sure it makes sense tax-wise, but you want to consolidate that. Most of the time, most people don't even know. You could take those 3 or 4 401ks and combine them into one rollover IRA.
Yeah.
And have that just simply peace of mind. Now you know where all your money's at. You can get reevaluated on your risk tolerance and what your goal is for the money. And we do this all the time for clients. And it's so funny where we'll be so focused on their current 401k, but they might forget, they have 3 or 4 other ones out there that might be worth close to what their current one's worth. So that's one of the biggest things. If you're listening to the radio show and you have old 401ks out there and you're not sure what to do with them or what type of investments they're in or if it's the best plan for you, give us a call. I'd be happy to run you some reports and take a look at that and really kind of add that to your current financial plan.
There are things that could be in your financial junk drawer. You're listening to the show today, and maybe we're talking about some things you haven't thought about lately. How about U.S. savings bonds? Very popular gift from grandparents to grandkids when they're born years ago. Yep. Not so much these days, right?
Yeah, it's not a very popular thing anymore, but you're right. It used to be, people would buy a $50 savings bond when their grandkid was born, and it was very common, and it was actually a pretty good investment back in the day. I mean, very low cost, and they had pretty good returns on them. Some of them, 4 or 5 or 6% bonds. I mean, hey, why not? So those are another thing I would definitely look. I had one client, Ron, where it was actually a grandkid of one of our other clients came in, and they had about $75,000 worth of savings bonds that had been maturing thing. And, it's something where you really start to add all that stuff up and take an evaluation of it. That could really help you in your current financial planning, whether that's, saving up and investing the money differently for maybe a higher return, or whether that's a house down payment. I mean, there's a lot of different accomplishments you could do with that money that are probably better at this time than maybe putting it in a new U.S. savings bond or a current bond. So definitely one of those used to be so popular. You don't see them much anymore, but it's definitely something where you probably have a few of those crumpled up in your desk drawer and aren't sure about it.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to mention here, and this is interesting to talk about in these days of incredibly high real estate prices, but maybe you bought a vacant lot somewhere, maybe 15, 20 years ago as an investment, and you haven't really paid attention to that one either. That's something that needs to be part of the conversation, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, Ron, I've seen it two ways. I could actually tell you a story where a client said, I bought this piece of land about 15 years ago. I put $50,000 towards it, and I thought it was going to be the next Orange County, right? That it was in the middle of nowhere, but I thought it was all of a sudden going to grow and be popular. And well, anyway, I put $50,000 in there. It's been 15 years, and it's worth $52,000, right? It didn't appreciate much. No one ever built out there. I mean, you see that a lot. But you also see the other side, like you were mentioning, where maybe you bought a $50,000 piece of property at some point, and we're maybe going to build a house on it, or just to have land, and now it might be worth $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in some cases, and it might be able to be better used for you in your current retirement plan. So you're right. I've seen those a lot, Ron, where it's maybe just a piece of dirt and you forgot about it, and it's something you really can reincorporate to the financial plan. And I think that's one of the things that's common with the junk drawer is you really want to make sure that you have all of this in order. And I think that's one thing that a financial advisor, a lot of people ask me, what is it that you do that's good for your clients other than just portfolio management? Because a lot of you guys out there are looking more than just, hey, you have money, let's put it in a 60-40 portfolio and you'll be good. You're looking for somebody that's actually going to do the work and really be more of an organizer for you and make sure we have all of these topics that are up to date and not just sitting in a junk drawer, making sure that they're actually being used for you and making sure that they're actually appropriate for where you are at this state of life, whether it's old life insurance policies, maybe an outdated estate plan, looking at all these old 401ks, can we do something better or more efficient for what we're trying to accomplish? And I think that's a lot more of what an advisor should be doing outside of just asset management. They should be looking at how to better your situation and making sure they're keeping everything on track for that upcoming retirement. So if you're looking for somebody, give us a call. Logan Sadler over here at Regary Financial would be happy to spend an hour with you and kind of take you through our discovery process and see if we might be a good fit for your retirement plan.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call for Regary Financial. You can leave your name and phone number. You'll get a call back from the good folks there, and you can arrange to have a one-on-one conversation with Logan Sadler. We call it a discovery meeting. Can be on the phone, could be via Zoom, or maybe you might want to come into one of the offices in Hemet or Redlands. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen either way. Logan Sadler, star of radio, podcasts, YouTube, he's everywhere. And I'm happy that he's on this show every week. One more time, that number is 888-823-PLAN with Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. This is the Financial Beat, and there's more on the other side of this timeout.
Don't you want to see sharp and not be flat in retirement? This is the Financial Beat.
Back now with more from Logan Sadler, the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Convenient offices in Redlands and Hemet. And we appreciate your listening to the show today. Remember, Logan not only has the radio show, but also podcasts, and he's on YouTube as well. Check out the YouTube channel, Logan Sadler, Regary Financial. And the number to call, once again, if you'd like to get in touch, leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back, and you can have a conversation with Logan one-on-one, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. When you do have that talk, we call it a discovery meeting. It's not going to cost you a penny and not going to obligate you to do anything at all down the road. 888-823-PLAN. I got a quote of the week here for you, Logan. I think you'll enjoy this one. George Carlin, one of the funniest people ever, no longer with us, but I thought the guy was hilarious, and he left a lot of good things behind. One thing he said was most people work just hard enough to not get fired and get paid just enough money not to quit. That's pretty much true, isn't it?
Yeah, talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Yeah, I agree with you on that. That's a great quote. There is a lot of people out there where, unfortunately, not all of us can do what we love for a living.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like you said, we maybe don't get paid the money we want, but just enough to where we can't really afford to quit. So, there is a lot of that out there. And if you are one of those people like myself, listen to the show where you are in a job that you're passionate about and enjoy it and get paid well, then make sure you count your blessings, because not everybody has that.
Well, these days a lot of folks, don't have a lot of loyalty to one particular company. Years ago, people used to stay with a company for 30, 40 years, but that very rarely happens these days, and a lot of changing jobs. So, something to think about for sure. Hey, there are dangerous mindsets you can get in, and I know this is kind of an opportunity for you to tell some stories about folks that you have known, clients or other folks that you've known who've exhibited some of these mindsets as it relates to their financial plan, and maybe you can explain how each mindset can be dangerous, and maybe how you help them get through that situation. There are a lot of folks that you meet who are absolutely complacent and don't really feel like doing anything. How do you deal with that kind of a person?
Yeah, one thing I always like to talk about is it's funny because for me, financial planning is obviously what I do and what I'm very passionate about, and it's something I think about all the time. And so sometimes it is kind of hard for me when I'm meeting with some clients where it might not be a big deal to them. I mean, they're very complacency is a huge thing where they're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I could just keep putting money away and I could retire at some point. And, well, I mean, hopefully the market goes up or, hopefully it doesn't go down too much. You meet with a lot of clients sometimes where they're not real concerned or they don't really have any type of hands-on approach, or it's really not a big concern to them at all. And so one thing I always like to do is I think that means that nobody's ever really took the time to explain to them how investments work and really educate them on the background of planning. I think that's where I typically tend to get a lot of clients excited when we're coming in. They think they're going to meet with somebody that's just going to show them some hot new flashy product or try to pitch them something. I think what I really like to take that different approach is let's focus on financial planning. When did you want to retire? How much money do we have? Is it possible? What do we got to do to get there? Really focus more on kind of bringing the questions to the table as far as what excites them, right? Because a lot of people don't necessarily think financial planning is exciting, but they might think not going to work anymore might be exciting, right? They might think that's exciting. So we really got to switch the conversation. And a lot of advisors out there do a great job, and some of them could do better for sure as far as really just focusing more on that financial plan. And that typically makes it more interactive with the clients. And that's typically how I've gotten around that complacency where we're just being able to bring the questions to them in a manner that they understand. And if they have questions, not to try to throw big words at them, but actually spend the time to educate them and kind of be that partner with them in their financial planning journey. And that's really how I've gotten around that with a lot of our clients, especially some of the ones lately where, there's a lot going on in the world. And sometimes if there's so much going on in the world, sometimes some people are really into it. Or there's some people that say, well, forget it, I'm just going to not do anything and just kind of sit here. And so it's been, right, I mean, there's always two types of people. So it's been great to really kind of focus more on the planning aspect and be more of a partner to them and their family in the financial planning journey and not focus as much on what products are out there or what's the best thing in the world for you, but really, what do we got to do to get you where you want to go?
Logan, how do you help someone who comes in very overconfident? I mean, they're just sure that everything is going to go great and they're doing wonderfully, and that's going to continue. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great one. There's a lot of overconfidence, and I always like to say a lot of the overconfidence is typically during good markets. I mean, you look at right now, a lot of people out there say, well, I mean, housing and stocks and bonds and all that stuff has just been doing pretty great the last 5 or 6 years, right? And even longer than that, the farther you go back, the better it's done. But I always like to tell people, having a stock isn't a retirement plan. Having a house or a 401k is not a retirement plan, right? Those are just types of pieces to the puzzle to get to the retirement plan. So what I've done is I actually have a client who I've been meeting with really for the last 2 years, and it's such an interesting story. I just kind of felt like I had to share it.
Okay.
So bear with me, okay? So basically, it's a client of ours who who's now on board with us. But when he came back to us a few years back, and he had around $800,000, and he had most of it in one stock. Okay, so I won't throw him under the bus. I won't mention the stock, but he had about I'd say 95% of that money all in one stock. And I met with him a couple times and showed him, what type of risk we were taking. He was 64 years old, and so it wasn't like he was 20 years old. He was 65 and was going to retire in the next year or two. And so I had told him, I'm like, look, we're taking a lot of different risk with this one stock. When things come time for retirement, if this stock fluctuates, 10 or 15%, that could really, really affect your retirement. So long story, we kind of kept in touch throughout the years. Very nice family man, and had a great family, met with him and his wife. And it was one of those situations where we actually kept in touch for about a year and a half. And all of a sudden, he came back in and said, Logan, everything you told me has clicked. You know what? He said, I had one of those scary moments where it just kind of hit me, what am I doing? And so long story short, to fill you in on that journey, his account went from $800,000 all the way up to $1.4 million.
Whoa.
And then it went back down to 1.1 million, okay? And then it went back to 1.2. And he said, you know what? Him losing that money and seeing that account go all over the place just kind of made him think, how much do I really need to risk? How much more would it really change my life if I made an extra 50 grand, but it would really change my life if I lost 200 grand. Right? So it really made him kind of settle into that mindset. And really, like I told him, not saying stocks are bad or that you shouldn't have money in the market, but you really need to understand the impact on that and how it could really change the outcome of that retirement plan. If that one stock in this example had any type of a scandal or any type of a bad earnings quarter, any of that stuff, it could really affect his retirement by a lot and very fast too. So that's one of those great stories. We're working with him over that year and a half or so. And again, as you guys can tell from the radio, we're not pressuring. I didn't call him every single day and say he needs to move his money, but really just have those conversations about, what is this all worth to you? What are we trying to accomplish? And really focus more on that planning aspect was a huge goal for him. And it was really great to kind of overcome that overconfidence and not try to scare him into it, but really let him kind of find that out on his own.
You're listening to Logan Sadler, Regary Financial, here on the Financial Beat, the show that's all about getting you to and through retirement. If you'd like to call and get a conversation with Logan Sadler, a discovery meeting, if you will, it is 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-PLAN. I'll give you that number again coming up in just a few minutes. We're talking about dangerous mindsets, and Logan, there are lots of people who fear is the number one concern. I mean, maybe they had a bad experience in the past, whatever the case may be, but some folks are just scared, particularly of the stock market. What do you do to help those people?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, one client is overconfident, right, and the next one's fear. There's always two ends to the spectrum there, and you're right, Ron. I mean, the stock market has been one of those places that has scared a lot of people throughout the years because a lot of people get into it thinking it's like this perfect marriage, where you're going to get into it and the market's only going to go up at a pretty good rate and you'll never have any type of bumps or hiccups along the way. And then you're typically in it for 3 months or a year or something, and then all of a sudden, one of those little bumpy arguments comes in, right, in a marriage, and all of a sudden the market's losing money and you don't know what to do, and it really scares a lot of people. So a lot of the times people either get too conservative or they try to overextend and worry about maybe things they don't have control over, and it just kind of causes a huge whirlwind of taxes, market risk, what am I going to do in the next year, or what should I do with my money, a lot of these different fears. And I think the best way to go about that is really focusing in on what type of risk are you comfortable with taking and making sure we're taking the right amount of risk, and then focusing on what types of returns and what types of risk are we taking. How will that get us to where we want to go in retirement? Like I always say, focusing more on the planning aspect is a great way with those clients to really take a step back and say, listen, I get it. Not every client listening to this radio show is an aggressive investor. A lot of them might not be comfortable with loss. I have some clients where that's one of the questions I'll ask them. If the market went down, when would you hit your panic button? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%? What is your number? Because every single one of you listening to this show might have a different number, and that's okay. I'm not here to tell everybody they need to be conservative or they need to be aggressive, but picking that right financial plan for you and figuring out what investments and what tools we need to put in there to get you where you want to go is really how you overcome that fear part. And it really, once you have that solid plan with different asset classes, different investments in there, and focusing more on your goals, it takes a lot of that off of the day-to-day fear of what's going to happen tomorrow, instead of focusing on now, what's going to happen over the next 5, 10, or 15 years. years, the long-term journey is really what matters.
Another mindset that's dangerous is one of cynicism. A lot of people are just cynical about everything, and I know you've had to deal with a lot of those folks as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think every profession out there has people in it where maybe they've done things wrong to clients, or people have had bad experiences, or maybe, people are just at that point sometimes where they meet with a financial advisor where they're just kind of looking to pick them apart and look at all the bad, right? I mean, we have that in every profession. And I always tell people, one thing I always like to take a stand on is, not everyone's a good fit for everybody. I always tell people every client that calls in might not be the best fit for me, and I might not be the best fit for you. And so that's why we have our process in play. That's why it's not like one meeting you come in and here's a proposal and here's the best investment for you. No, it's a process. We have 3 meetings before we ever move any client's money, because I want to make sure we're a good fit, and I really like to spend that time to educate the clients and also make sure that we're somebody that's going to work well together. Because if you have an advisor that you don't fully trust, or that you don't really kind of see eye to eye with on investment philosophies and planning, it's probably not going to be a good relationship for either of you, right? So it's really important with those people that are focused on the cynicism and looking at kind of the negative point of view on everything. It's important that, as an advisor, I like to take the time to really make sure we're understanding our clients, they're understanding us, and making sure it's a really good fit before we dive into any type of contract or investments or anything like that, and really making sure personally it's a good fit for both of us for the long term.
Also, one more mindset I wanted to throw at you here, Logan, and I know you've dealt with this as well. There are folks who just are dealing in despair. They're just so sad about maybe what's happened in the past and maybe their prospects for the future that it makes them a very difficult person to deal with, but I know that you have had to overcome that lots of times.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of these clients that may be in despair, there's, sometimes despair can mean like, some type of situation where they just didn't know what to do. I mean, they're just in complete disarray, and there's a lot of different feelings that go on with financials. And, I actually had this one client who she didn't really deal with anything. She was her name was Bonnie, and she didn't deal with any types of accounts. She didn't do anything. Her husband did everything for her, not in a bad way. That was just his role. She did other things in the relationship, and it worked for him. They were 85 years old, and they were with us for about 5 or 6 years. And she came to the meetings, but was never really involved. Didn't really have any type of communication with us because it wasn't what she wanted to do. Well, all of a sudden, her husband passed away. And he, like I said, he did everything as far as the taxes. I mean, everything down to the penny as far as what to do on financials. And when he passed away, she came to us and was very open to what we had to say as far as how to really take the time to get to understand her. I think she kind of believed in us, obviously, because her husband trusted us, but also to really take the time to understand her and kind of spend the time to where, again, not trying to intimidate her or telling her what to do, but really just kind of figuring out how can we be there for you and what do you need us to do to make sure that you're comfortable. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up, is not try to combat, and get argumentative, but really just kind of, listen, I understand you went through a huge loss. How can we be there for you? What do you need us to do? And I think that's where we've really done well over the years with our clients, is just being a human being, right? And putting emotion first, and really understanding that, it's really about the long-term journey, and making sure putting our clients first, it typically helps that journey be a lot more smooth, and covering all these different type of topics that come up, because like I said, not all of us are the same. And so we all have these different types of emotions, and whether they're positive or negative feelings or fear or overconfidence, we're able to kind of talk through that and see where we're trying to get with all that.
Oh, man, you deal with so many different people. I know you've been doing this for quite some time, and I love it when you tell these stories about folks you've dealt with, because I think we can all learn from those. I'm going to give out that Financial Beat number for Regary Financial in just a moment here, Logan. What happens when you talk to somebody for the very first time?
When they come in for that discovery meeting, it's one of my favorite meetings, because I love meeting new people, hearing different journeys and where you've been and what you're trying to accomplish. And our specialty really is planning and preparing for retirement. Most of the people making that call are typically between the ages of 55 and 60, and they're looking for, hey, I've saved well, I put money away, and all of a sudden I might be retiring next year or in 5 years, or I'm not really sure when. How can I get there? And that's really what we cover at that first meeting is, what is your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your experience with money? What's your experience with the market? How's your what are your kids up to? Do we have to plan for college? I mean, all of these things that some financial advisors don't spend the time to do, that's what we do. We really like to go that extra mile and take a deep dive into our client's journey, and that really helps us build a more well-rounded, customized financial plan. I always tell people, as a fiduciary, we're licensed to do stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, insurance products, everything. So we have everything at our disposal. And really, we like to make sure we have a great understanding of what it is the client's trying to accomplish, and then put the right pieces in there to get the client where they want to go. But it all starts with that discovery meeting where we sit down and really just get to understand each other and really take a deep dive into you and your family.
Remember, there is no charge for that discovery meeting and no obligation involved. The number to call to get one is 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-PLAN. That number is for Regari Financial, serving you with offices in Hemet and Redlands, wherever you happen to be in Southern California or anywhere, really. Call this number, 888-823-PLAN. That is good for a conversation with Logan Sadler. Again, cost-free, obligation-free. 888-823-PLAN. Get your own discovery meeting, a one-on-one conversation. I'm Ron Stutz, along with Logan Sadler, VP, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. We'll be back with more in a moment on today's edition of the Financial Beat.
You're listening to The Financial Beat, the show that makes sure your financial plan has the perfect pitch.
Welcome back. This is the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. This show is all about getting you to and through retirement. Logan Sadler deals with estate planning, retirement income, taxes, retirement. He has classes sometimes at local universities and senior centers, as well as online. Going to get back to doing things like that one of these days. We've had a little bit of a lull and that kind of thing because of COVID and other restrictions, but Logan enjoys educating folks. And as a matter of fact, he educates me every single week on this show, and I'm sure he does you too, and that's why you tuned in to listen to this program. Logan Sadler and the folks at Regari Financial have great partnerships with local accountants, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists, all of those things. And I mentioned that to point out that he offers well-rounded guidance in all things financial for clients. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to have a discovery meeting with Logan and get started on planning for your future. Hey, Logan, as always, we got great questions in the mailbag today. And Laura lives in Morro Bay. Laura has a good question here. She wants to know, should I move my IRA away from a place that charges a 2% fee? That seems high to me, and I'm not sure how to tell if I'm really getting my money's worth.
Yeah. Hey, Laura, thanks for writing in. That is a great question. I think most people, when you hear 2%, it freaks you out, and it is a higher fee for sure. The industry standard, depending on how much money you have there, is typically between 1% to 2%. If you're over that $1 million range or over the $2 million range, a lot of advisors do taper the fee down, but 2% is quite a bit. I mean, like I said, industry standards from about 1, more towards the 1 area, all the way to 2. 2 is definitely at the very high end of that scale. What I would ask myself, and it kind of seems like you maybe answered that already, is what type of value are you getting from this advisor or this account? Do you trust the person? Is it someone you have a great relationship with? That's a lot of what I'd be asking myself, because if you're paying this type of fee, you better be getting either, great returns, or you better be getting great value in return, and you better have someone that really has great service and all the other stuff that comes along with it. But I would definitely say, give us a call. I would love to do an analysis of your portfolio and see what exactly you're paying 2% for, because if it's a 60-40 portfolio that doesn't do much more than that, you're probably paying way too much in fees there. So like I always say, I'm not here to say fees are good or bad, but if you're paying that much, you definitely want to make sure you're getting the right amount of value out of that relationship as you can, because you're definitely on the higher end there. So give us a call. I'd be happy to kind of do some analysis for you on that.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's important to know the value you're getting for your money. So, hey, yeah. Laura, hope you will give Logan's office a call and come in and have a conversation about all that. Next question here is from Andy in Orange County. Andy says, for some reason I thought that my Social Security benefits weren't taxable, but now I know better. I guess Andy must have found out the hard way.
Yeah.
But he goes on to say, I'm positive that I've heard people say they don't pay taxes on their Social Security. Are they confused or am I confused?
Yeah, that's funny, Andy. Great question. It's funny because you might both be confused in some cases, right? But let me clear that up for you. So basically, how Social Security works is your full retirement age is a very important number. Andy, you didn't really state your age, so let's just say maybe your full retirement age is 66 and 10 months, let's say.
Yeah.
Once you reach 66 and 10 months, and it's different for everybody, it might be 67 or 65 and 5 months, whatever your full retirement age is, it'll actually show you that on your Social Security report. But anyway, if you hit your full retirement age, then you can now earn income and not be taxed on your Social Security. If you are, just because you're 62 does not mean your full retirement age. It just means you're eligible to receive benefits. So what that means is you can't make over a certain amount or your Social Security becomes taxable. So that certain amount in 2022 is $19,560. If you make over that amount, and you're not full retirement age, your Social Security can become taxable, and depending on the amount of income, up to 85% could be taxed. So you really want to make sure you're kind of sitting down with somebody. I always tell people Social Security is probably one of the biggest investments most people have, and they don't even know much about it. And when they decide to elect it, they don't really even talk to anybody. They just kind of go ahead and take it. They don't really analyze their different assets they have, their income, and all these other important factors they have. So you definitely, Andy, were right, in some aspect, but your friend was also right in some aspects as well. So make sure you're meeting with a professional. Give us a call. I'd love to kind of go into depth more and kind of maybe strategize better before taking the benefit, or if you're already taking it, kind of look at some other ways to maybe potentially make an impact.
Okay, Logan, we're going to go to Palm Springs for our next question. It's from Joanna. Joanna says, I'm trying to roll over a 401k from an old job into an IRA. My understanding was that this wouldn't cause me to pay any taxes, but there's a section on the form that mentions a mandatory 20% tax withholding. That spooked me a little bit, so I put everything on hold for now. Logan, how do I make sure that I don't pay any taxes on this move?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joanna. And to clear that up as well, there is a couple different ways you could do a rollover or withdrawal from an IRA or 401k. And let's walk through that real quick. So when you're doing a direct rollover, typically when you have a company, when they do the 20% withholding is if you're taking a withdrawal. So there is a difference between a rollover and a withdrawal. A withdrawal means that, most of them are going to automatically withhold 20% of the money in taxes and then send you the net amount. It does not sound like that's what you're wanting to do, and that is typically what I don't recommend is the 20% withholdings, because most of the time people want to do a rollover, like you stated. So how you do that is I recommend working with a professional like us or someone like us and make sure you're doing this correctly. But essentially how it works is you do what's called a direct rollover. It's called a trustee-to-trustee direct rollover. What that means is, let's say you got $200,000 in your 401k at Vanguard example, and you wanted to do a direct rollover to TD Ameritrade. The money goes from trustee to trustee, which means company to company, and you never touch the money. So it's a direct rollover. No taxes would be due on that. And so now it would be able to be tax deferred or tax free, depending on what type of account you have, if it's Roth or traditional, in that new IRA account. So there is a right way to do that, and make sure you're doing that correctly, because like you said, I would definitely be spooked as well. You don't want to lose 20% right off the top. So make sure you're consulting with a professional to make sure you're doing that rollover correctly. All three of these were great questions this week, Ron. I think they brought some great questions to the table that a lot of you listening might have had questions on. And if you're interested, if you're doing if you're wondering, is my fee too high where I'm at? When do I take Social Security? And how do I do a rollover? Is it something I should consider? That's what we're here for. Obviously, we're here to do some education on the radio show, but we are, we do meet with clients and our financial advisors and specialize in these topics. So if you're interested, give us a call back. I would love to sit down and spend some time with you and go over how to make a financial plan work for you in retirement and really take a deep dive into all of the different sectors that come with retirement planning.
Logan, before I get into the phone number here, I just wanted to ask you one more thing. Fairly recently, you have added podcasts and also a YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. Tell folks how they can acquire that if they, miss the radio show. That's a particularly important thing to mention. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so basically the podcast is recorded each week with the radio show, and it's uploaded wherever you download podcasts. So you can go right to the podcast land, whether it's Apple, Amazon Music, or Spotify, and type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and you can get every radio show we've ever done. It's all recorded and put on there for your convenience to listen at whenever you would like. Whether you're traveling or driving in the car, you could check it out. As well as for some of you that are more visual, we also created a separate YouTube channel that's called, again, The Financial Beat. And you can type that in and subscribe to it. We have different videos coming out each week. They're between 5 to 15-minute videos on different retirement planning topics. For those of you that are more visual, we take more of an in-depth view on that and kind of go through more visual aids on that. But basically, each week, you can go on there to The Financial Beat on YouTube or on podcast and download each available of those content and keep up with us each week.
Just remember the name of the show, The Financial Beat. That's all you got to do is search for that, and you can access all of that good information. Again, the phone number to call if you'd like to arrange a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler, Edward Gary, is 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-PLAN. Call that number right now. Why wait? Don't procrastinate. That's not your friend. Procrastination, terrible thing. 888-823-PLAN. Call right now. Leave your name and phone number, and you'll get a call back, and then you can make it happen. You can have a conversation with Logan either on the phone or maybe via Zoom. Eventually, you might want to come into one of the offices, Hemet and Redlands, decide if you'd like to work with Logan. He can decide if he can help you, and there is no obligation involved at all. So, hey, walk away if you like, but I think you will enjoy the conversation. You'll certainly learn a lot, and the number to call to make it happen again is 888-823-PLAN. This is Ron Stutz, and I have enjoyed spending time with Logan Sadler as always. And Logan, I guess I'll talk to you next week.
Hey, Ron, always a pleasure hanging out. And all you listeners, we appreciate you stopping by, and we look forward to seeing you next week with another edition of The Financial Beat.
The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for anyone. All information discussed is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of BD Financial Group and do not necessarily represent the views of AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. AlphaStar and BD Financial Group are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.